Hello. Today we're going to be looking at the GCSE core practical on antibiotic inhibition. To do this we're going to be practicing what is called aseptic techniques, which is all about keeping the bacteria or work that we're using as sterile and clean as possible. So the first thing you'll notice is that we have a Bunsen burner. It is on the safety flame. It is purely there to create the convection current. So it's creating air to rise away from where we're working and prevent bacteria and dirt in the air falling onto what we're working on. Next, before we start and after, we are going to clean the surface with a disinfectant. In this case, it's a bactericidal and virucidal disinfectant, Virkon, which is bright pink. And we need to make sure that we clean the entirety of our surface before we start any work, and again after we have finished, so that there is no possible risk of contamination. Then we can set out our equipment. In this case we're going to be pouring an agar plate which we're going to inoculate with a bacteria. In this case we have three different bacteria. We have Bacillus subtilis, Micrococcus luteus and Escherichia coli, which is commonly known as food poisoning. Now, the first thing we're going to do is prepare our plate. Now, we're going to be testing the inhibition of three antibiotics. We have ampicillin, streptomycin and penicillin. And we're also going to be conducting a control. So to enable us to do that, we're going to equally divide our agar plate into four, so that we can put one of the discs in each zone, and we can label each zone so that we know where the disc is. We're then going to label it with what bacteria we're going to put in there. So in this case we're going to use E. coli. So we're going to write in the one corner E. coli, today's date, and my initials, so that we know whose plate it is, what's on the plate and when it was made. Now we've got four sections, so one of them at the edge, and we always label the bottom of the plate just in case the lid gets lost. We're going to label one as C for control, one as P for penicillin, one as AP for ampicillin and one as S for streptomycin, so that we know when we put our discs on where they are. Now, the next stage is we're going to take our agar, which is liquid at the moment, but it solidifies at about 45 degrees and melts at around about 90. We need to make sure that it's not going to be too hot for our bacteria. If it's too hot when we put our bacteria in there, the bacteria will die. So it needs to be no more than around about 50 degrees. So you have a fine window for inoculating it. We're going to set the Bunsen burner to a gentle heating flame, and we're going to use this to heat up our inoculating loop, which is basically a tiny wire loop on the end of a rod. So we're heating it up to sterilize it, because this is what we're going to use to transfer our bacteria. We're then going to carefully open our vial of bacteria. We're going to flame the neck of the bottle just gently for a few seconds, put our loop in, we're going to touch it at the side to make sure it's cool, and then we're going to scrape some of the bacteria. We're going to flame the neck of our bottle, put the lid back on. We're going to take the lid off our agar, flame our agar lid, put the inoculating loop into our agar, agitate it around, put the lid back on, and then flame our loop again to kill any bacteria, any residual bacteria that is on. We must make sure that our loop that gets red hot all the way along every time, so that it completely kills any bacteria or anything else that might affect how our results or ruin our aseptic techniques. When we've done that, we're just going to agitate it to make sure that the bacteria that we've put in there, although only a very small amount, is spread evenly throughout the agar solution. Now we're making sure that we do this with the lid on, because agar is a very jelly-like substance, and if you get it on your hands when hot, it will burn. Now we're going to again get our plate ready, set it to a gentle heating flame, lid off our bottle, flame our bottle, and then we're just gently lifting up the lid slightly. Now notice that I've only lifted the lid just slightly, and then I'm flaming again. So what I did, and I'll show you a bit clearer, was you have an agar plate. I lifted it slightly at one end, just enough to get the bottle under, making sure that the lid is still covering the disc, so that any debris or anything else that might be floating around doesn't fall into the bottom of our disc, into the bottom of our dish, and therefore ruining aseptic technique. Once we've done that, we've got to allow the plate to set. Now they take about 20 to 30 minutes to set, depending on the temperature of the room, so I happen to have prepared some earlier. Okay, you'll see that they're already labelled and marked up, and then all I now need to do is add to it our antibiotics. Now our antibiotics come in a nifty little dispenser, okay, which basically means that if you squeeze it, it will dispense one little antibiotic disc. Now, you shouldn't handle antibiotic discs just in case you have an allergy to them, hence why we have the dispenser. So, again, we're aseptic, we've got our Bunsen on, which we'll set back to our safety flame. We're literally lifting the lid up, poking it under the edge, making sure you don't touch the agar, and dropping the disc in place. Now that you've got the disc in place, they're only sat on the agar, so you don't want to be moving and turning the plate upside down and shaking it about, because it can dislodge and move them around. And we need to make sure that we put the antibiotic disc into the correctly labelled section. We're going to repeat this for our other two antibiotic discs, trying to place them as centrally in the zone as possible, but it is easier said than done. And then we're going to come to the final zone, which is our control. Now, to make sure this is a fair test, we have some sterile discs. Now, the discs are made of the same material as the antibiotic, but they are sterile. There is no antibiotic, there is no bacteria, nothing on them. They are completely sterile and have no antibiotic. Now, to place these on, they're not in a dispenser, so to place these on, we're going to use a set of forceps. Now, forceps normally are not sterile, so we have to sterilise them. And this is a bit where we have to be very careful in what we're doing. So, we're going to sterilise them using 70% alcohol. Now, as you're probably well aware, alcohol is flammable. Hence why I have the bottle of alcohol well away from the flame. I'm going to remove the lid from the bottle of the alcohol. I'm going to dump my forceps in. Only, not the whole way up, just the bottom 3 or 4 centimetres, so that I know that the flames are going to come nowhere near my fingers. I'm then going to secure the lid and put the alcohol well away from the flame. I will then put the alcohol into the flame, and the alcohol will burn off on the forceps, destroying any bacteria present and making them sterile. I can then use the forceps, making sure I don't put my fingers anywhere near the end, to pick up a sterile disc and place that sterile disc in the final zone, which then means I have 3 zones of antibiotic, each one a different antibiotic, and one with a control. I'm going to repeat that for 2 other bacteria. We've done E. coli, we've got Micrococcus luteus and Bacillus subtilis. So not only are we going to see how the antibiotic works with one bacteria, the antibiotic works with one bacteria, we're going to see it with three. So we have 3 different bacteria and 3 different antibiotics. When I've done that, we're going to leave them and we're going to tape them up using sellotape. When we tape an agar plate up, we're not sealing them airtight. If we seal them airtight, it makes them respire anaerobically, and we do not want anaerobic bacteria because anaerobic bacteria are very bad. So a Petri dish actually is designed that it has tiny little, which are very hard to see, but tiny little built-in air gaps at the very top. There are 3 on this one, it's triple vented one, so there are 3 tiny little gaps that allow air to get in and out. But only tiny air, but they're so small that no particles or debris or anything can get back in because they'd have to go up, round and down. So we're just going to tape it, 1 piece each side, just a tiny little bit, just going round so that we're not going all the way around the outside. We're just literally taping 1 tiny section either side to allow those air gaps still to work. When we've done that, they will be incubated at less than 30 degrees for a couple of days to allow the bacteria to grow. And you're going to come back and see in part 2 what the results look like. Thank you.